on the Democratic side because of the wide open contest there, the things that have happened, the shakeups that have happened in just the last several weeks, and the front runner being a self-described Democratic socialist. So we could have a Democratic socialist who wins the primary potentially and is actually one step away from becoming governor of the state of Wisconsin, at least if you go by what the polls have said leading up to this. Francesca Hong, state representative in Madison, is one of the, is the leading candidate right now, at least in terms of those numbers. But David Crowley, county executive in Milwaukee, endorsed by Governor Tony Evers, still thinks he has a little something to say about that. And there are a couple of other candidates that are still officially running that are on the ballot, and then others that have dropped out. We're going to go over all of that. We've got a lot of places to take you tonight. There are watch parties that are taking place in Heartland for Tom Tiffany. He is a U.S. representative who is running for governor on the Republican side, the presumptive nominee there, the one who is favored by and endorsed by President Trump. And he is running against Andy Mansky on that side. But again, there are several candidates on the Democratic side. So he's out in Heartland at a rustic barn, very rural look, at least from the outside. And that is fitting of Tom Tiffany, a rural outstate Northwoods congressman, and someone who has really played up throughout this campaign his small-town Wisconsin roots. And then the others that we'll be checking in with are, and by the way, we have Bria Jones, who's up in Heartland. I think it's Bria who's up there. And then we have Bill Miston, who's at the Hyatt downtown Milwaukee, right there in the center of Milwaukee County, home of County Executive David Crowley. And that's where the Crowley Watch Party will be tonight. And then Francesca Hong is in Madison at Atwood Music Hall, which is, I just learned tonight, an old renovated tabernacle gospel facility that was built back in the early 1900s and was only recently converted into a music hall. That's where she'll be setting up shop. I think the media is still waiting outside to get into what'll be the watch party there, because they haven't even opened the doors. It seemed like it was a bit of a lengthy process for media to find out if they were getting credentials to get in. There's a lot of interest in the Hong campaign. For better or worse, she has been a candidate who's gotten a lot of attention in just the last couple of months. And so there's a lot of media that would like to be there. They had to go through a process of deciding who were, I believe they said, going to be the 80 members of the media that would be credentialed to have spots on the camera, the dais or whatever it is that's raised up there, so they can hear whatever speech may happen later. But we know our Sam Kramer was among those who got credentialed and got the word they'd be going in at 7 o'clock. So he's not even in the building yet, but will be in a little bit. We'll be checking in with all of them. And of course, we have our Jason Calvi, political reporter, who is, I heard someone describe today, I think it might have been, I don't know if it was if it was Bryan Graham, who's, I forget everybody's exact titles these days, or Carrie Doctor, who's our digital streaming director. One of them said, I think it was Carrie. I think you said that he looked like he was on about 5 cans of Red Bull already. But that's Jason Calvi on election night all the time, and sometimes maybe not on election night. But this is always a big day. He is on top of all of it, and he's going to give us his thoughts and analysis on what's coming. If you haven't already voted, you do still have an hour and 25 minutes to get to your polling place in Wisconsin. The polls close at 8 p.m. They opened at 7. And as always, yes, you need a photo ID if you go. If you're registering at the polls today, if you've never voted in Wisconsin, or if you've got a new address, you want to vote at a new polling location, you bring your proof of residency. And then remember that all you have to do is be in line by 8 p.m. for your vote to count. You will not be kicked out of line. They won't shut off the lights and lock the doors. They'll let you in as long as you're in line in time. Absentee ballots can still be accepted up until 8 p.m. So if you mailed yours and you're worried, I don't know if it's going to get there, if it gets there by 8 p.m. today, that'll be counted. But if you do go to vote and you haven't already done so, I think most by this point have, if they were going to in this primary. But if you still plan to try to get there, remember, you can only vote in one party's primary. This is different from a general election. In a general election, you can vote for anything on your ballot. You go to the polling place, whatever's on there, you vote. Here you're picking, am I voting in the Republican primary or the Democratic primary? And I don't think there are any or many places in Wisconsin where there is another party that has a primary that's on the ballot. There might be in some small locations, but not here in southeastern Wisconsin that I'm aware of. So you're choosing between Republican and Democrat in that sense. And once you pick it, you can go down that lane. And by the way, you don't have to be a member of either of those parties. In fact, you can claim to be a member of one party and go vote in the other party's primary as long as you stick to only those members of that party on your ballot. It's called an open primary system. That's what we have here in Wisconsin. And that means you have the ability to go vote in any election in whichever primary you want for whatever party you choose. You just have to stick to that party for that election. So we are hearing there are Republican voters that are crossing over intentionally and filling out Democratic primary ballots because they want to vote for Francesca Hong for governor because they think Tom Tiffany can wipe the floor with her, because they think she's too controversial. They think she's too far out there. Some say, careful what you wish for. She's building a lot of steam. Could she be a force in the general election? There's a lot of questions that are out there. We're going to talk to some experts about that tonight. We'll be talking in a little bit to Craig Gilbert, Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel, longtime election follower, journalist who's covered many, many elections, and a great analyst in these situations. And we'll ask him a little bit about the Hong effect, what we've seen in just the last couple of months. I was doing a search earlier on Google Trends for Francesca Hong. And if you look over the past couple of months, just the past couple of months, her name has gone from virtually unrecognizable nationally to absolutely skyrocketing. Again, I say for better or worse, it's kind of like the P.T. Barnum effect. She is getting attention, whether that's good or bad, she's getting it and getting a lot of it. In some cases, it's because she's having to talk about controversial old social media posts that she's made. And I say old, that's a relative term. Some of them are from 2020, 2021, 2019, 2022. You can decide as the voter if that's old, but they are past tweets where she has talked about things that have gained her some notoriety nationally and gotten some interviews on national talk shows and other things where she said she wanted to cancel Thanksgiving or she wanted to abolish the police, among other things. And she's had to try to walk back some of that. Whether or not that has been effective, again, will be seen at the ballot box. But it is one of those things that's getting her an awful lot of attention. Of course, David Crowley's hoping he's getting a lot of attention because he got a major endorsement. And that endorsement came from Governor Tony Evers, who until very recently had chosen not to endorse anyone in this race. On his way out, he wanted to let the Democratic field play itself out. He did not endorse Mandela Barnes, his former lieutenant governor, who was in the race until very recently, and in fact was one of the leaders until very recently. He did not endorse Sarah Rodriguez, the current lieutenant governor, who dropped out after an unexpected and sudden financial scandal with double-entered donations and so on and so forth. That imploded just very recently. David Crowley, who got out and threw his weight behind Sarah Rodriguez, then got back in when she withdrew. Got the endorsement of Governor Evers when he got back into the race. But it was late in the race, and the last Marquette poll that was taken, which we'll talk about later, showed 7% support for David Crowley. So was it too late? A lot of questions to be determined. There's a couple of others, of course, that are in the Democratic race we'll talk more about as well, but they're getting they're getting just a couple of percentage points, not likely to be the winners here tonight. But we'll talk about all of it. We're going to take a break here on the Wisconsin Live Desk and come back in just a little bit. We're going to be talking to Jason Calvi, and we'll also be talking to Craig Gilbert. And I'm just trying to close down some windows because it said I needed an Excel license and I don't have it on this computer. We're going to take a break. We'll be right back here on the Live Desk in just a couple of minutes.
This is the Wisconsin Live Desk.
Bryan Polcyn here at the Wisconsin Live Desk, and just out of view right now, you can't see him over here, but Carrie Doctor is my hero. You see his hand? Carrie, thank you so much. Oh, I looked the wrong way. I guess I'm looking screen or whatever it was. Anyway, there's a fan here now, and I'm a big fan because that's going to make me feel a lot better, a lot cooler. I want to go to Jason Calvi, who is in our newsroom right now, and bring him in, and I'm going to make sure I get the right audio thing to push up here for you, Jason. But Jason Calvi, it does just say news. Is that what it says? Thank you, Delaney. I should push the one that says news. Hey, Jason Calvi's here in the newsroom. Jason, I know this is a busy day for you. We always say that. But this one, we're talking primarily about about the Democratic primary here because obviously a lot has happened in just the past few weeks.
Yeah, it's been whiplash, hasn't it, Brian? I mean, you got candidates drop out of the race, candidates get back in the race. Governor sat out for nearly almost a whole year, then endorses. You've got 100,000 absentee ballots that were submitted by the time Mandela Barnes drops out of the race. So you've got a big mess, a lot of shakeup here in Wisconsin. And I think it's important to look at all those factors as we're looking at what's going on here. The whole nation's watching what's happening in Wisconsin because there's really this battle playing out for the soul of the Democratic Party. The future of the Democratic Party. What should it look like? And after 2024, the devastating loss for Democrats not winning the White House, they looked at what should the direction of the party look like moving forward. And you saw different competitions at the local level, including New York's mayoral race. You can look at last week's Senate race in Michigan, and now this battleground state of Wisconsin, the Democratic primary today, is also one of those test cases, where to go, what the future of the party looks like.
You know, Jason, I'm going to be pressing buttons wrong all night because I haven't been back here in a while. Let's talk about you and I, on an election night, we'll talk about like where are we watching? What numbers are we looking for? How do we compare this to the numbers? We'll crunch, spreadsheets worth of data going. What happens if it happens over here in this county, if it starts to swing that way? We've seen, for instance, in general elections, what's happening in Waukesha County, changing and shifting, or in Cedarburg, and you kind of get an idea, boy, if it goes that way, that's a bad sign for so-and-so. Or what do you do with this one?
You can't really compare it because the last go around for a Democratic primary, the last time it was a competitive Democratic primary for governor was 2018. And there were 10 names on your ballot then. This go around, there's 7 names on the Democratic ballot. So it's similar numbers, large numbers of people running in an open primary for a Democratic governor. So where do you go from here? You can't really compare county by county because there's so much has changed, so many differences here. What I'm going to be looking at tonight in the election results, I'm going to be looking at Dane County, for example. Usually we get Dane County's results pretty quickly. They don't have a central count process, so central count is used by cities like Milwaukee. It's where all the absentee ballots go there. And, that's that long process of opening up the absentee ballot envelope. There's the outside envelope, so you open that up. These 2 election workers are going to open that envelope up. Then on the inside, there's going to be an inside envelope that has a signature and address of the voter and a signature and address of a witness. So the 2 election workers are going to look at that. They're going to say, oh, yep, we got the signature here, we got the address is correct. Okay, now we can move on to opening up this envelope, opening that up, and then they have to iron out the ballot before it can even go through the machine. So that process takes time. In Dane County, that whole process is done at your local polling place. In Milwaukee, all the absentee ballots are done together at what's called central count. So Dane County's results do tend to come pretty quickly. We're going to start seeing those results when the polls close at 8 p.m. We're going to start seeing results likely from Dane County. So I'm going to be looking at that and say, how is Francesca Hong doing in her home county, in her home city of Madison in Dane County? Is she really ramping up the score in her home county? Is that looking good for her? I mean, when you look at the numbers of Democratic voters in Dane County, every year it's been increasing. The size of the Democratic majority in Dane County has grown and grown over recent elections. And so we're going to see exactly what those numbers look like tonight as Democrats go to pick between 7 different candidates on the ballot, even though there's only 4 that are still technically running a race for governor. Those 3 that have dropped out.
And I know, Jason, you're going to be in the studio tonight at 9 with that fancy touch screen behind you. You'll be able to show us where all those numbers are coming in. My guess is, though, by the time 9 o'clock rolls around, we may know some things. This isn't like a November general election where you could be waiting until midnight. Stuff could come in rather quickly tonight, but we'll be checking in with you, of course, later on for some of that. Thanks a lot for checking in right now. I want to try to bring in Craig Gilbert, but I got to move some things around. Let me make sure I've got this set up right. But Craig Gilbert, who I promised you we were going to talk to, and be patient with me because I'm like a disc jockey who's never run the machine before. But I'm going to see if I can get you set up. I think I've got you on router 1, and if I do, we're going to punch you up right here and see if I've got it right this time. Yeah, we've got Craig Gilbert. All right, Craig, let me get your audio tuned up as well. First of all, Craig Gilbert, Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel, longtime political reporter. Thank you for being here with us on the Wisconsin Live Desk.
The big night.
So it is a big night, and it's am I right about what I said? Do you think first of all, are we going to get results pretty quickly tonight?
Yeah, well, I don't think we're going to have to wait until 3 o'clock in the morning to find out the results. But, different parts of the state come in at different times, and it's really going to have more to do with the margin than the timing. I mean, if it's a close race, it could be later. If it's not, we'll know very quickly.
Really, what's made this particular election one that's getting so much attention and so much focus, obviously, is, first of all, the upheaval of the last few weeks on this Democratic side in a wide open race. There's no incumbent governor who is running for re-election. So you've got this wide open race on both sides, but particularly on the Democratic side. You've had these late withdrawals, you have the late endorsement, and you have this surge from a Democratic socialist, Francesca Hong. Is this fundamentally an ideological election? Is this an electability election? What is this for Democrats right now?
Yeah, so we're going to find out. I mean, I think, I'm not sure ideology is always the right word when we're talking about the differences between the candidates. Fran Hong is probably getting support from people. She's obviously getting support from the most liberal voters in the Democratic Party, but she's also getting support from some people that just want to send a signal and send a message and are frustrated with the Democratic Party's inability to do more against President Donald Trump. But electability, we're going to find out tonight how big an issue electability is, because I think, if David Crowley either pulls off a surprise victory or he comes a lot closer than people expect, I think that will be read as a lot of Democratic voters being nervous about Hong's electability in November. There's so much at stake here. I mean, obviously this is part of a national story about the direction of the Democratic Party, but for Wisconsin Democrats, I mean, this could be the first time in the history of the state that Democrats have held the governor's office for more than 8 years in a row. It would be a rare shot at a so-called trifecta where they could, win the governor's office and both chambers of the legislature, not to mention liberal control of the state Supreme Court. So the stakes are massive. And, the interesting thing about the electability question is nobody can tell you the answer, but it's a very real and relevant and fair question in this primary.
I mean, we know that's obviously the word socialism is the target that Tom Tiffany and Republicans are going to use if Francesca Hong wins this Democratic nomination. But when you hear the term Democratic Socialist, and to be clear to those of you who are watching, there is no Democratic Socialist Party in Wisconsin. There is no Democratic Socialist primary. It's the Democratic primary. She's running as a Democrat in Wisconsin, but she identifies as a Democratic Socialist, and there is a Democratic Socialist movement in Wisconsin. You see all of the candidates there. By the way, real quickly, you notice the 4 on your screen that are still in color. That's because they're still actually running, but all 7 are on the ballot. Mandela Barnes dropped out recently, Missy Hughes quite a while ago, and Sarah Rodriguez back in July. But Craig, with regard to that question, or that phrase, Democratic Socialist, what does it really mean? What should listeners understand that, or viewers understand that to mean? Okay, that's why we see that now on the screen, and I don't hear Craig. I think we lost Craig's signal. But I do want to hear his take on that. I will tell you, while we wait for Craig to come back, again, that of the people you see here on the screen, Joel Brennan and Kelda Roys, I think, in the most recent Marquette poll, each had 2% and 1% respectively. David Crowley, 7%, and Francesca Hong, 38% of the vote. That was the latest Marquette University Law School poll. There are other polls out there. The Crowley campaign themselves referred to others that showed the race closer than that 31% margin. Maybe it was closer to 20%, but it was still a substantial margin. The other three, Mandela Barnes, who recently, he was actually, as of the first Marquette poll this summer, which came out just before the shakeup of Sarah Rodriguez leaving, he was in second. He recently stepped out of the race. Sarah Rodriguez was really where all of this started to, shall you say, become chaotic, because Rodriguez was considered to be, other than Francesca Hong, more of the establishment favorite and potentially one of the leaders. May not have been. Barnes might have been ahead of her, as we saw in that poll, but she was believed to be one of them. And then it was discovered that she fired her campaign manager, and discovered there were financial irregularities with some of their campaign finance reporting, and that imploded quickly. Her campaign fell apart and she withdrew. And then David Crowley, who had just gotten out of the race just before that, got back in on July 18th, in part because he was getting the endorsement of Governor Tony Evers. And then we thought, well, now this Marquette poll's no good. It doesn't have David Crowley in it. What do we know about what voters think? So Marquette did another poll right after Sarah Rodriguez dropped out and David Crowley got back in. But that poll found David Crowley had just 7%. And again, we saw an increase for Francesca Hong from 26% up to 36%. So her lead increased. David Crowley didn't see much, but he had just gotten back in the race. So there's real questions about what those poll numbers mean. And later on, we're going to talk to Charles Franklin of the Marquette Law School poll about what to make of the numbers in this race. Her lead seems huge. And in most primaries, I think you'd say that's a lead that's insurmountable. But so much has changed so rapidly. And there were so many undecided voters. There were huge percentages of undecided voters in both of those polls. I think there were still 34% undecided as the most recent one that came out July 29th that had her at a 31% advantage. That you just don't know. And of course, in these late stages, did the non-Francesca Hong voters coalesce behind David Crowley? Or are they still putting votes in for Joel Brennan and Kelda Roys? And by the way, you also have to consider that in addition to all of that, see if I can get rid of that for a moment just so you can see me. You have to consider that in addition to all of that, there are questions not just about the undecideds and so on, and did people throw their weight behind it, but all the people who had already voted. There were thousands and thousands of people. I think I've got the numbers here. Before Sarah Rodriguez dropped out of the race, 67,000 people had already voted in this primary in the state of Wisconsin. Now, not all of them on the Democratic side. We don't know how many were Republican or Democrat. We just know that it was 67,895 people who had already cast ballots before she dropped out. And then we know Mandela Barnes withdrew on July 31st. By then, 138,000 people had cast ballots in the state of Wisconsin. If they voted for Mandela Barnes, they can't re-vote. That's a new thing this year. The Wisconsin Elections Commission ultimately ruled you can't spoil your ballot and say, I want another try. So if you already voted for Sarah Rodriguez, if you already voted for Mandela Barnes, that vote's locked in. And then if you went to the polls today and you're one of the people who didn't understand that some of the names on the ballot are people who aren't still running, there might be more people who voted for Barnes or voted for Rodriguez or voted for Missy Hughes or one of the other people, or I guess so those are the three that aren't still running. So we don't know what that impact is going to look like, but we're going to find out in short order. There's still about an hour until the polls close. It's 6:57 right now. They close at 8. So if you're watching this and you're somewhere and you go, gosh, I forgot to go, get to your polling place. You've got time if you want to go vote. You've got to be in line by 8 o'clock. We're going to take a break here on the Wisconsin Live Desk. Hopefully we can get Craig Gilbert back up and running, but I see his face still looks frozen on the screen next to me. But we will get to much more of that, and our reporters who are live out in the field at many of these watch parties. We'll get to all of that coming up in just a bit here on the Wisconsin Live Desk.
This is the Wisconsin Live Desk.
Fox 6 investigator Bryan Polcyn here at the Wisconsin Live Desk on election night, August 11th, 2026. It is the partisan primary here in the state of Wisconsin, and the biggest race on the ballot, of course, the race for governor, as Governor Tony Evers is not running for re-election. So we have a wide open primary on both sides. There are two candidates on the Republican side, and that includes Tom Tiffany and Andy Mansky. And while Tom Tiffany's gotten the endorsement of President Trump and seems to be, in polling-wise, the runaway leader, Andy Mansky has hung around in the race and said, look, I was in this thing. I promised people I was going to do it, so I'm sticking around till the end. Tiffany is the 5-term Republican congressman from Wisconsin's 7th District, a longtime figure in state GOP politics. Andy Mansky, a 26-year-old Milwaukee area healthcare service technician, making his first run for elected office. Tiffany, the expected nominee on that side, but the real chaos has been on the Democratic side, of course, where the front runner far and away so far has been Francesca Hong, a Madison State representative, former restaurant owner, community organizer. She represents the state's 76th Assembly District and has since 2021. She is the daughter of Korean immigrants and identifies as a Democratic socialist. She is leading in the polls and has been expected to be potentially the nominee, but she's got to hold off a challenger, David Crowley, who has the endorsement of a popular Democratic governor, Tony Evers, and he is trying to make a run to catch up and close that lead and potentially pull off a surprise Democratic nomination victory tonight. There are a couple of others, of course, on the ballot. Joel Brennan, the former secretary of the Wisconsin Department of Administration, one of the only 4 remaining Democrats that are active on the ballot for governor right now, along with Kelda Roys, a Madison State senator, attorney, and businesswoman. They both have around 1 or 2% of the polling numbers that we've seen, so it really appears to be a race between Hong and Crowley, though Hong, again, carrying a heavy lead, according to polling, into this. The question is, can you trust the polls? Are the polls going to be accurate in a case this chaotic, where you've had people dropping out, getting back in, dropping out, even leaders in the race that are dropping out late in the game? That remains to be seen. And many are looking at what happened in Michigan, in a Senate race there, where polling that showed a candidate with a heavy lead, a far-left candidate, El Said, was barely the winner in that case. So some wonder, if polls were so far off there, could they be in Wisconsin? I guess we'll have to wait and see. We'll find out in a little bit. I'm still waiting to see if we're going to get Craig Gilbert back. I don't hear that we have him just yet. I know we've got some of our reporters out in the field as well. While we've got time, maybe it's worth me talking about some of the sheriff's races we have across the state, because there are 3 here in southeastern Wisconsin that are a fairly a big deal, and I want to okay, I hear we've got Bria Jones in a little bit. There are 3 sheriff's races that are going on, and if I can pull up what those are, we have in Kenosha County. On the Democratic side, there are no candidates, but on the Republican side, you have 3, the incumbent David Zerner, then Tony Gonzalez and James Beller. In Racine County, you have a Democratic candidate, Donald Vandervest, but it's a county that has been won the last several elections by a Republican. And in that case, on the Republican side, you have Kerry Madrigal and Henry Perez. And then in Waukesha County, no Democratic candidates, 2 Republican candidates, Nick Ollinger and John Gescheidmeyer are the candidates in that one. So those are races we'll be watching for the results of tonight as well. There are some state assembly races that are taking place as well. Also, congressional races, U.S. House of Representatives, and that includes Tom Tiffany's seat that he is vacating, House seat number 7, or District 7, where there are 3 candidates on the Democratic side and at least 4 on the Republican side. And on the Republican side, that includes Michael Alfonso. He is the son-in-law of Sean Duffy, Transportation Secretary, and has gotten the endorsement of President Trump despite his young age. I believe he is just maybe 24 years old, something of that nature. I've got the stats in here somewhere if I could flip to the right page and tell you all about that. But he is, okay, yeah, he's a young man, but he's gotten that endorsement from President Trump in the race for House District number 7. I hear we have Bria Jones, and what should I pull her up in? Router 1, Remote 11. I'm going to tell you all the things I'm doing, because if I say it out loud, I'll make it look right.
Bryan's pulling us up now. I don't know.
Let's see, do I not have her in the right place here? I hear her, but I don't think I want to yet, do I? Oh, no, I hear her. I just don't see her yet. All right, let's do that. Okay. Well, what you're seeing there is this is the Tiffany campaign, right? This is inside the barn. Yeah, I think they're just getting set up. Let's see if I can go back till they're ready. We'll come back. It's kind of like watching somebody in the dressing room. We'll find out when Bria's all ready to go. But she is at the rustic. What's it called there? The rustic barn, rustic something or other. Do you remember, Delaney? You told me. I had the paper. See, I had the paperwork on all these things just a little bit ago. Rustic Manor, thank you. Rustic Manor in Heartland. It's a wedding barn venue. It's got that very red barn, beautiful facility, and does kind of hearken to Congressman Tiffany's rural roots, even though he's come from the North Woods where he lives to Heartland to host this party. And that's where Bria is. Looks like she may be set up now. I'm going to see if we can bring Bria back in here. Bria, if you can hear me, you are inside the barn.
Yes.
You can hear me. It sounds a little loud
inside of the barn. Yes, the supporters are already starting to trickle in. What is it? It's 7:06. The doors have officially been open for about 6 minutes, but we probably saw people starting to arrive around 6:45 or so. Bryan, obviously this is paying homage to Congressman Tom Tiffany's roots. Growing up in Western Wisconsin, we've seen a lot of those advertisements talking about how he grew up on a farm milking cows, and so it's very fitting that this party here is inside of a barn. Now, of course, there are 2 candidates here that are on the ballot to be Wisconsin's next governor on the Republican side, and that is Congressman Tom Tiffany, and Andy Mansky. Andy Mansky, he's obviously not polling as well as Congressman Tom Tiffany. A lot of people are already calling this a victory party, and the polls have not even closed yet. Mansky, we know he's born and raised in Milwaukee County. He says he's a little guy with maybe little funding, but he's focused on some of the bigger issues. Where we have Tom Tiffany here, we can kind of see some of the swag he has here for his guests. Excuse me, a lot of supporters here as well. Taking a little bit of a gulp myself. There is a cash bar back there, so I kind of want to give you a lay in the land of the party here as we kind of set the scene here for our people that are watching here on the Wisconsin Live Desk. Lots here happening at the Tom Tiffany party. Already high energy. Obviously, so many people seeing how he's been polling to be the winner here in this race. He has the endorsement of President Donald Trump as well as Vice President J.D. Vance. Let's get over to some more of the swag here. He has these You Betcha Tom Tiffany for Governor koozies. He has all the different T-shirts and swag. And a big part of what his campaign has been saying from the very start, this was never a primary election race for them. They have already had their eye on the end goal here, knowing that they will be going all the way to November. And Tiffany, obviously, saying that he wants to make sure that Wisconsin is more affordable. Yesterday, he had that campaign event just talking about how he wants to cut some of the red tape so that Wisconsinites can afford housing at a younger age. He wants healthcare prices to be transparent. And he also has been proposing, saying that if he is elected governor, that he will propose a property tax freeze and also get rid of that 400-year tax increase there. So I also, if we can kind of look over here as well, this again is the lay of the land. It's kind of interesting. Just already so many people that are here. Congressman Bryan Style is also here. We're told from the campaign that he will be actually introducing He will be introducing Tom Tiffany at some point tonight. I am told that Tiffany, he's not planning to get on the stage. They say he's not planning to get on the stage until actually after the Democratic side of the race has been called. And so that's when we are expecting to hear from him. We're told that he will be introduced by Congressman Bryan. Eric, if we can kind of walk over here. A lot of people are kind of noticing themselves on the screen because we are they're broadcasting the Wisconsin Live Desk here on the Jumbotron.
That's what I was going to say. I said they've got good taste.
And watch you, Bryan. I know, we can see you. I can see you finally. So I
don't know if that's a good or a bad thing, but I'm proud of him.
That doesn't always happen on live TV. And so now here we are. This is where we are expecting that Tom Tiffany will be delivering a victory speech at the end of the night. It says, "Move Wisconsin forward together." And so I know that Tom Tiffany is here. He is in a separate room, but at some point, I know at this point we saw when Congressman Sile arrived, he went to go talk to him. So we know that he has been communicating with Congressman Bryan Sile tonight, and at some point after the Democratic side of the race has been called, we will see Tom Tiffany take the stage here. And that's when all of these people here are expecting him to deliver a victory speech, Bryan.
You know, it's a beautiful facility, but I have to admit, wood paneling and all that, the acoustics aren't the best. So I know if anyone had a hard time hearing you, it's loud in there. We can tell it's noisy.
I apologize.
I can imagine they would.
Maybe is this better?
That is better. You got to do like the Twitter style now.
Okay.
This is like TikTok,
I know, this is a
social
style.
Media, vertical video. This is the day and
I
age.
want to show you some of the food here as well. I know this is the thing that we're doing. This is what we do on the Wisconsin Live Desk. We take people behind the scenes. I don't think I've ever done an election night live shot where I've shown the food. So this is a very first for me. But hey, this is what we do. We're showing people how the sausage is made. We've been here. Obviously, this food is not for us, but these are for the people that are here for the party. And here, Tom Tiffany is walking in right now, live here on the Wisconsin Live Desk, being greeted by his supporters. And this is the first time, to my knowledge, that he has been in this room throughout the night. And so he just walked in with one of his campaign staffers and security. Already you can see him all smiles. Even yesterday at yesterday's event, he says today's focus is about winning the race. And then from there, we know that he has his eyes set on the general election. And so tomorrow, there are already some campaign events that they have planned as well. So they will be, I think, hitting Kenosha and Green Bay as well. And everyone who wins tonight from the Republican Party, everyone on the ticket will be at a joint shared event tomorrow, sharing the stage, talking to voters, Bryan.
All right, we get an early look at Tom Tiffany making an appearance at the campaign stop tonight. Thank you, Bria. We'll check in with you a little bit later on.
All right.
And I believe we have, who do we have next? We're going to, Delaney? We're going to take a break. Okay, I think we have one of our other reporters out in the field, Bill Miston. We're going to be headed to next.
This is the Wisconsin Live Desk.
Fox 6 investigator Bryan Polcyn here on election night, August 11th, 2026. Just point out again, I'm in a white shirt with no jacket, mostly because it's warm in here. Carrie Doctor, our digital executive producer, did bring me a fan that's cooling it down a little bit, but I'm going to hold off on the jacket for now. Speaking of somebody who's in a jacket and tie, looking sharp as ever tonight, that is our Bill Miston, who is at the Hyatt downtown for David Crowley's campaign party. Bill, what is the scene there, and is it any cooler there than it is here in the Live Desk studio?
Yeah, significantly cooler, Brian. It is an icebox here in the ballroom on the second floor of the Hyatt here in downtown Milwaukee, where the election night party for David Crowley will begin at 8 o'clock. I've been in here for a couple hours now, and it was a nice reprieve when I came in, it being nice and cool, but having been in here now, I'm really relishing having this jacket because it is keeping me as warm, or as warm can be considering the temperature in here. But no doubt the campaign is hoping that this ballroom fills up this evening with supporters as they look to hope to have a victory night party here for David Crowley, the Milwaukee County executive, who was in the race. And then I'm sure you've detailed this, and it's the four-way primary. Before that, there was a seven-way primary. Three candidates dropped out, including Lieutenant Governor Sarah Rodriguez. Now, she was a presumed front-runner early on, and David Crowley exited the campaign and put his support behind Lieutenant Governor Sarah Rodriguez last month. But then there were questions, right? We've told you about this before, where there were concerns and questions about how much money Lieutenant Governor Sarah Rodriguez had in her campaign coffers. And that was some serious turmoil that ended her campaign. So for about 10 days or so, David Crowley was out of the race. And then the question was, with him having exited the race and endorsed Rodriguez, what would happen next? Well, Crowley re-entered the race, and the scuttlebutt then was, who will endorse Crowley, seen as a more moderate candidate than the front-runner in this now four-way primary against Francesca Hong. Now, a recent poll, state navigation poll, had Crowley has Hong leading in the race at polling at 44% to Crowley's 22%. That's a 2-to-1 difference. But as we've seen in some other races, namely the recent Michigan Senate race, that the polling may not be as indicative of what voters are going to do on election night. Heading into tonight, had a lot of conversations with people, and people asking me, what's your prognostication, or what's your expectation? And to be honest, never really that good of a prognosticator when it comes to this, because voters can be a fickle bunch, and who ends, especially for primaries, since it's an open primary and people can cross party lines and vote differently than they may normally vote in a general election. So there's definitely some hope that from Crowley. We spoke to him today after he cast his ballot at the Milwaukee German Immersion School with his family. He said it was a surreal process being able to cast ballot for himself on the ticket for governor, or for at least the Democratic primary for governor, considering the last time that he was full-on running was for county executive and elected in 2020. That was during the pandemic. So he said it was a great experience being able to vote with his family, his daughter casting a ballot for the first time. And then Crowley was back out on the trail drumming up votes. He was in Wauwatosa near North at 90th and North Avenue earlier today, and then later went to the Wisconsin State Fair. And we spoke to him, though, after he cast his ballot today, and he said that he's optimistic with the momentum that he's been able to build even since re-entering the race, again, seen as a more moderate candidate than the front-runner in the four-way primary with Francesca Hong, the Democratic Socialist candidate who's running on the Democratic ticket for Governor Bryan.
So you're there now early, and you said it's chilly inside. Obviously, if David Crowley were to overcome the trailing in the polls and overcome getting out of the race and getting back in and somehow pull off a primary victory. It would heat up in there big time, I would imagine. Will Tony Evers be there tonight? Do you expect to see the governor there?
Well, we know that Tony Evers has endorsed David Crowley. A big question heading into this primary was who would Governor Tony Evers endorse? And we didn't know for quite some time, and with this up and down nature with the Democratic candidates, who Governor Evers would endorse. He ended up endorsing David Crowley. Evers was at a campaign event last night at the Cooperage along with Congresswoman Gwen Moore. She is also up for re-election. She has endorsed David Crowley. Crowley has the backing of a number of unions as well as area lawmakers, elected officials. And so there's a big hope. And again, like you said, it would heat up in here big time if Crowley is able to overcome this perceived deficit in the polls, but also being a candidate, then backing out of the race and then getting back in to try and see where that takes him, the campaign takes him. Again, it's a four-way primary right now, but Democrats are already calling for a unity ticket for whomever is elected, both or nominated for the Democratic ticket for governor and lieutenant governor. Plans are already in place to go across the state here in the coming days after election night to drum up that support. David Crowley has said that he is in the best position as a candidate to beat Tom Tiffany in the election for governor, Tiffany being the presumptive nominee running unopposed on the Republican ticket. And what Crowley has said is that the importance is to try and the state legislature is currently controlled by Republicans, and there is some possibilities that there will be some movement there in the Senate and the Assembly. We won't know what those numbers will be, but Governor Evers, for his last two terms, has acted as a check on the Republican-controlled legislature, and Crowley has said that if a Republican is elected, that it would begin the immediate rollback of everything that Governor Tony Evers and Democrats have put forward over this period of time. And so the concern from Crowley is that if he is in the best position to beat Tom Tiffany in that general election.
I just hit my mic. There we go. All right, Bill Miston, who is at the Hyatt downtown Milwaukee with the Crowley campaign. We'll check back in with you a little later on tonight as well. So
Thanks, Bryan.
What time do we have here? It is 7:22 on election night. The polls are open another 38 minutes, so you've got a little bit of time to hurry up and get to your polling place and cast your ballot. At the Mequon Public Library tonight at about 5:40 p.m., I was voter number 738. So that gives you an idea roughly how many people are turning out for this. I think typically for an August partisan primary election in Wisconsin, we might see anywhere from 15 to 20% turnout, maybe 25% in a particularly contested year. And this is one of those where on the Democratic side, it might be one of those that draws out additional people. We'll have to wait and see, and we'll be watching and following those numbers. We do know from the absentee ballot count, and if we've got that graphic ready to go to put up again, I'd see if I can find and put it up. There we go. This is the number of absentee and early votes. Now, July 17th, early voting wasn't open, not in person, but there were 67,000, almost 68,000 absentee ballots that had already been submitted in Wisconsin, and that was before Sarah Rodriguez's campaign had the financial scandal and imploded, and she withdrew from the race. And when she did that on July 17th, all those 68,000 votes that had already been cast locked in place because the Wisconsin Elections Commission had already determined for the first time that you cannot spoil your ballot. In other words, if you've already cast that ballot and sent it in early, you cannot cancel that one, get a new one, and re-vote. We don't know how many of those 68,000 were even for the Democratic side versus the Republican side. And we don't know how many were cast specifically for Sarah Rodriguez. We know the Marquette poll that came out a day after that, or a couple of days after that, only indicated that she received 11%, I think, of the vote at that time. So you can extrapolate what that might have meant. But in any case, those 68,000 were locked in place. July 31st, that's when Mandela Barnes dropped out of the race. By then, 138,000 early ballots had already been cast, both absentee and in-person early votes. Those are locked in place. And as of this morning, the Wisconsin Elections Commission reported 285,000 ballots had been cast as absentee or early in-person votes. So those will all be, they've been counting them since 7 a.m. They can't open them until Election Day when the polls open. So they opened them at 7 o'clock. They've been processing them at all of the central count locations and polling locations, individual locations across the state. And then, of course, after the polls close, they can continue counting those ballots along with all the new ones that have come in. So we'll see how long it takes to get our results tonight. Probably not as long as it takes in a general election, but we'll see just how long it is before we have some idea. In terms of the really big case we're watching, or cases we're watching for the governor's races, if the margins are huge, it's not going to take that long. If the margins are tighter, for instance, if County Executive David Crowley happens to pick up some ground on State Representative Francesca Hong, and it's a closer race, that could take longer before we see what the outcome looks like. I'm going to take a break here on the Wisconsin Live Desk, and when we come back, we are going to start heading back out into other places in the field. We still have yet to visit the Francesca Hong Watch Party, which is in Madison. We're waiting to hear from Sam Kramer, as the doors weren't even opening there until 7 p.m., but we'll do that and more when we come back in just a couple of minutes. Fox 6 investigator Bryan Polcyn here at the Wisconsin Live Desk. 7:28 right now on election night, August 11th, a little less or a little more than 30 minutes before the polls close. And we are closing in on having a nomination for governor for the Democrats and for Republicans. And we will wait to find out who those are going to be. On the Republican side, it is widely expected to be Congressman Tom Tiffany. And on the Democratic side, the leader going in, polling-wise, Francesca Hong, state representative from Madison, but still has a big challenger, David Crowley, with the endorsement of Governor Evers, along with two others, Joel Brennan and Kelda Roys. Joel Brennan, the former Wisconsin Department of Administration secretary, and then Kelda Roys, currently a Madison state senator. Sam Kramer, I believe, may be up and ready for us to go to him. Let's see, I can see Sam. Sam, we're going to see if we can hear you as well. You are inside Atwood Music Center, is that right? Or Atwood Music Hall?
Atwood Music Hall, yep, in Madison. Logistics here have been a challenge. Hopefully you can hear me okay. I'm not on the Wi-Fi yet because they have so many press here, for more than 100 easily. And so we are up in the rafters. If I can flip this around, I will. This is our view. The stage is there. I was talking with some of the staff, capacity for 600. They have CNN on right now. And so we are actually up here on the balcony, and let me show you how close we are. Very close quarters up here.
That is
for all
super tight up there.
Came in. Yeah. So I don't know if they just thought having as many members of the press here, which is interesting considering the polls. But nevertheless, we are in. We have eyes on the stage. And with polls closing here shortly, you would imagine that this place will fill up quickly.
So let's talk a little bit about the candidate. We've seen your venue. You've seen the shot you have. And actually, let me just say this. The fact that there are so many members of the media there says a little bit of something about the expectation. Obviously, Francesca Hong has led in the polls. She's a controversial candidate, running as a Democratic socialist. And I say controversial. She's controversial within her own party. She's running, obviously, in the Democratic Party. And while she has a lot of energy, she also has many people who are concerned that maybe some of her comments from several years ago and maybe even some of her positions could make her someone who is difficult to get statewide support in a general election. Tell me a little bit about what has sort of set up this Francesca Hong train, which seems to be running full steam right now.
Yeah, well, I mean, if you go back to her campaign announcement video, anytime a candidate does that, look, they're looking for a huge splash, right? And so what does she do? She leans on her roots, her background as a chef. She's got the apron on. And not only is she blunt, but she just swears and talks about, first thing, that the system isn't working for everyday working people. And that's really what her campaign, that's really the crux of this campaign. And she talks about affordability. What is she going to do for that? She wants to increase the tax on the state's highest earners, take that money, instead of the 400-year property tax increase that Governor Evers signed via veto, or created veto, and use that money to fund the public school system. Talks about putting a moratorium on data center construction so that the state can research and learn more about the water, power, environmental impacts before. And she also wants to roll back some of the tax credits, state and local tax exemption laws that actually Governor Evers signed to make Wisconsin attractive to these major tech companies like Oracle, Meta, et cetera, et cetera. So she's targeting that. She's also really wants to align with other Democratic cities and states that do not work with ICE. Certainly, we've covered it in length here on Fox Local, pertaining to different trials about how a handful of Wisconsin local county sheriffs are working with ICE. She wants to outlaw that. She doesn't want local jails to double as federal detention centers or sheriff's deputies to be able to work as federal agents there as well. So those are big things. She talks about healthcare. You expect that. But there's been a lot of controversy, not just from what she says, but also the issues that align her with Democratic Socialists. And a quick point on that. She is a member of the Madison chapter of the Democratic Socialists of America. She does not have an endorsement from the national DSA, nor is she a member of that. She says she agrees with some things with that DSA platform, not everything. What are those things? Universal child care. She wants publicly owned grocery stores. Also universal paid leave. So similar to what Minnesota has, in that giving parents, both parents, the opportunity to take state-sponsored time to be with their kids versus it being on the private employer, which obviously the benefit can vary. So what has happened really ever since David Crowley drops out of this race and ultimately Sarah Rodriguez, the lieutenant governor, drops out of this race, is the spotlight that is on 7 people shrinks down to 4. And really within that 4, you could argue it goes down to 2, being State Representative Francesca Hong and the Milwaukee County Executive David Crowley. And given what Zoran Mamdani did in New York City, winning the mayor's office and really kind of touting that socialist support, the question is, well, can that work elsewhere? Clearly, she thinks it can, and all of the polling data that we have seen would seem to indicate the same. But the more traditional, historic Democrats, if you will, these people often referred to as the establishment, have their doubts about, does that work? Are moderates moderate Democrats or independents, is she too far on the political spectrum to earn their vote versus do they see Tom Tiffany, the congressman, as a safer vote?
Well, and
that is the
end,
biggest
Sam,
question.
I think it's one thing to talk about positions. Obviously, she's been talking an awful lot about her own words, her own statements, and some of those on social media. One in particular that I have on the screen right now from 2020 when she said, "Cancel Thanksgiving, should have done this in 1621. You can go on and read on the rest for yourself. She's had to address that. You talk about the attention she's received. Some of that attention has come not from necessarily some of those positions, but because of some of these tweets. You don't hear Bill Maher talking about David Crowley. He's talking about Francesca Hong. I do wonder to some degree, is it a P.T. Barnum thing, though? Because everybody's talking about Francesca Hong.
And again, I guess I point to our situation up here. We are crowded. There are tons and tons of press here. It would seem that when they decided on this venue, perhaps they didn't think about the attention that she was going to have. And certainly to an extent, in a primary of 7 people, it is a good chunk of this primary is a battle for attention, is it not? And so if you can do that in a way that draws people to your platform, her being a state representative draws people to the bills that she has authored, that she has co-sponsored, voted on even. At least there is something there for her to say, hey, once I have your attention, I can point you toward this.
All I can say, Sam, is as I watch you, I feel like there's a little bit of our favorite broadcaster in you, Uke, must be in the front row as you're up above. Hope you survive the rafters. We'll be checking back in with you, obviously, throughout the night. Thanks a lot,
Sounds
Sam.
good. Thanks.
All right. I think we're going to be going next to, am I right that we have Charles Franklin from the Marquette Law School poll? Is that right? Okay. I think if we've got him, I'm going to go right back out. And if we do have him set up. Hey, look at that. That was a quick turnaround. Charles Franklin here, Marquette Law School poll. Hey, thank you for being here with us on the Wisconsin Live Desk.
Glad to be here.
So this has been quite a race. I don't know if I've seen anything quite like this, with candidates dropping out and getting in and dropping out all in the weeks leading up to a primary election. For us as voters and journalists, it's one thing. What's it like for a pollster?
Well, it's a little inconvenient, you know. We can barely finish a poll before somebody drops out, or sometimes they drop out in the middle of the poll. It fundamentally adds greater uncertainty to the outcome of the race. So we've seen Hong lead in all of the polls done by me and done by others throughout the month of July. And it would seem like she has a pretty solid lead. On the other hand, so much has changed in the candidates and the governor's endorsement and the very late ramping up of the campaign. Honestly, just in the last 2.5 weeks of the campaign, did we see really fairly intense campaigning. That just adds additional uncertainty to where we are. And if that wasn't enough, look to Michigan, where the race there was supposed to be comfortably for the progressive, the not quite Democratic Socialist candidate, El Sayed, but he barely won by, I think, 1 percentage point, or maybe it was 2. So, some of us are sitting here kind of waiting to see some votes come in and know whether we look like the polls were showing, or we look like Michigan, where it turns into a very close race. If it does, I'd say that has a lot to do with all the changes that took place since July 8th, when David Crowley first dropped out.
I know that within your own polls, you see that within the Democratic Party, there are some that have concerns, and that word keeps coming up, electability of Francesca Hong. When you look at the support she's gotten, it comes largest from young voters and from very liberal voters. What does that say in a general election? And can you really extrapolate from a partisan primary, or do things change when you get into the general? Can she successfully make that shift into a general election and appeal to just more than the very liberal voters of that party?
Yeah, I think you want to be careful extrapolating too much. Surely if she wins tonight, there's no question that she will keep the support of people who describe themselves as very liberal Democrats. But she'll almost certainly gain support from somewhat liberal and moderate Democrats because now it'll be a partisan contest. You're not comparing Hong to Crowley to Brennan to Royce, but you're comparing Hong to Tom Tiffany. And for Democrats, that won't be a terribly hard choice. But as you get more to the middle range of the ideological spectrum, and as you get to older voters, that's where she'll have to work to solidify her Democratic support with those groups, moderates and older voters, where she's not strong in the primary. But partisanship will help with that. I think the biggest issue is, if it is Hong versus Tiffany, is that in our July poll, 51% of registered voters said the Republican Party was too conservative, and 52% said the Democratic Party is too liberal. So where are those voters in the middle who look way off to the right, and there's Tom Tiffany, and way off to the left, and there's Francesca Hong? How are they going to decide, and what can either of these two candidates do to appeal to them?
So when the polls close in 20 minutes and we start to see numbers roll in, what are you, especially someone who's watching these numbers leading up to it, what are you going to be looking for as clues?
Well, I'm going to look at the biggest counties in the state in terms of the Democratic primary vote. That comes from Dane County first, actually, and then Milwaukee County, looking at the average turnout in Democratic primaries in the last few years. But people sometimes forget that Waukesha County is the third biggest bastion of Democratic votes in the state. You wouldn't think that given the November voting in Waukesha, but it's a strong Democratic county in primaries. And then number 4 would be Brown County, getting up to the Fox Valley and looking at maybe, in addition to Brown, Winnebago, Outagamie, and see what's going on in those places.
I think it's pretty safe to say that Francesca Hong is going to win Dane County, but the margin obviously matters. David Crowley, does he win Milwaukee County? And if so, how big of a win does it have to be?
Well, it'd have to be pretty big if you think that Dane and Milwaukee sort of punch at about the same rate, meaning they both have close to the same number of voters in a primary. He needs to run up the margin there to come close to matching, if not quite matching, Hong in Dane. But I'd also look outside of Milwaukee County and see who does well in Waukesha, because certainly David Crowley has a natural base in Milwaukee County. We'd expect him to do well there. But Waukesha is a little bit of a different question about who's a Democratic primary voter in Waukesha. In our polling data, Hong was leading in the entire Milwaukee media market, which is much bigger than just the county or the WOW counties. But I will be looking to see if in the WOW counties and some of the other suburban counties in the Milwaukee market, who's leading in those races. And then you can also look outstate. You can look at Eau Claire and La Crosse and Wausau to see what's happening elsewhere in the state.
You know, I asked the question just a moment ago of Sam Kramer, but Francesca Hong has gotten a lot of attention, for better or worse. I looked at Google Trends, and her name has gone from almost non-existent to off the charts in just the last couple of months. Is there somewhat of a P.T. Barnum here in, all publicity is good publicity? There's no bad publicity.
Well, I'm not sure there's never any bad publicity, though maybe that's true. I do think that she's become a lot more prominent in national media in these final 2 weeks of the campaign. And that feeds off everything from Mamdani's success to Democratic Socialists winning in primaries in New York and in Denver, Colorado, and now here in Wisconsin. So the national attention to it is pretty obvious. I think the positive side from Hong's point of view is that if she can expand her support base, her donor base, well outside the state, that could be very helpful in the fall election. And I suspect that's one of the reasons she's been doing as many national interviews as she has in the last 2 weeks, as compared to talking to Milwaukee media or Wisconsin media.
Last question I have for you now, and hopefully we'll get to talk to you again during the 8 o'clock hour, but crossover voting. We know there were ads that were placed by Republican-supported organizations that appeared to attack Francesca Hong, but many believe they were actually essentially a secret message to, hey, Democratic voters, that's who you should vote for. And we know there are some Republicans who are in fact crossing over to vote for Francesca Hong because they think she's the candidate Tom Tiffany can most easily beat. But then there's always a careful what you wish for in any race when you do something like that. But from a polling standpoint, how does that complicate trying to predict things when there's crossover voting?
Well, we do ask people in our polling which primary are you going to vote in, and from that, it looks like between 4 and 6% of the Democratic turnout will be coming from Republicans. But when you look at who they're voting for, some are voting for Hong, but actually quite a few of them said they were voting for Joel Brennan or voting for David Crowley. So I think if you live in the Twitter world, you might believe that there's a big strategy for Republicans to cross over and vote for Hong, and there is some of that. But I think what you see with those crossover Republicans, for the most part, is they're crossing over and voting for the more moderate Democrats. Now, why they're doing that is an open question. I don't have data on why they decided to do that. So it complicates things a bit. But hey, that's the law in our state. We have open primaries. Anybody can play along.
Charles Franklin, director of the Marquette Law School. Poll, thank you for being here on the live desk, and we hope to have you back some in the 8 o'clock hour to talk about the results as they're coming in.
See you then.
All right. We are going to take a break here on the Wisconsin Live Desk. We'll have more here on election night, partisan primary 2026 in August in the state of Wisconsin. I'm Bryan Polcyn. We'll be back after this.
This is the Wisconsin Live Desk.
And good evening, Fox 6 investigator Bryan Polcyn at the Wisconsin Live Desk, now 7:48 on August 11th. We are 12 minutes away from polls closing in this partisan primary election with the race for governor at the top of the ticket, the Democratic nomination for governor and, of course, the Republican nomination, each up for grabs as Tony Evers, the governor for the last 2 terms, is not running for re-election. Earlier, if you were joining us, you might have seen that we had Craig Gilbert here to talk, share some of his expertise, political expertise on, and his picture froze. I think we have Craig back, and I want to thank you for coming back, because I think the freezing was on our end. We've got it all cleared up, but thank you for coming back on the live desk with us.
Yeah, we'll try again.
So I think where we left off when I was last talking to you, I mentioned this label, Democratic Socialist. And for those who don't know what that means, or they think, wait a minute, is there a new party in Wisconsin or a new party? No, there is not a new party. Speaking of parties, Ted Perry's hand is reaching in. Look at this. This is how you know it's election night. There's pizza. And Ted Perry just handed that to me. So speaking of parties, and he set that aside. Serious question. Democratic Socialist, it's not a political party. It is an ideology, a label. So tell me what that means.
Yeah, I mean, labels do have an effect. I mean, if she just called herself a progressive Democrat, she could still be the same person with the same positions, occupying kind of the same place on the left-right spectrum within the Democratic Party. But because she calls herself a Democratic Socialist, I think she's sending a stronger signal to the party's most liberal voters, and we've seen this in the polling, that overwhelmingly support her. That's been a big, added value to her in this primary, but it also, as you've talked about and we've talked about, comes with a lot of risks in the general election.
Now, beyond that label, obviously she's had past statements, things she's posted on social media that have gotten a lot of attention, and she's had to try to talk her way out of or back down from in many cases. There's the Thanksgiving tweet that we showed a little bit ago, cancel Thanksgiving, but maybe more pertinent to policy, she's said things like defund police, abolish ICE, things like that. She has walked some of that back to some degree. For voters, is that effective, or does that linger, and does that give potentially an opponent like Republican Tom Tiffany red meat to target in a general election?
Yes, red meat. I mean, it's a lot of ammunition for the other side, and you're going to hear, if she wins the primary, we're going to go right into some wall-to-wall Republican attack ads, many of them focusing on these, controversial tweets and statements and positions. So voters are going to hear all about that. And she'll have to, kind of stand up to the fire and find a way, maybe hopefully for her, a more effective way to parry those attacks than, we sometimes saw in the closing days of this Democratic primary.
We saw what some would call the Democratic establishment try to rally someone, to coalesce behind someone who could keep up with what became a fast-moving train, the Hong campaign, as it got out to such a big lead. The Sarah Rodriguez campaign obviously imploded because of the financial concerns, and David Crowley, who'd gotten back out, got back in. The governor gives him an endorsement, and then the next Marquette poll comes out, and he's at 7%. Was it too late in the game by the time they started making those moves? We still have 4 candidates in the race. It's not even a 2-person race at this point. For those who would want to see that sort of single candidate have a chance, was it too late in the game?
Well, there's a couple different dimensions to this. And one is, all the comings and goings and the fluidity of the field, and all that played out, as well as I think Fran Hong could have hoped. There was also the decision by these various alternative candidates to hold their fire. And so Fran Hong has benefited from the fact that she really hasn't had a lot of pushback until the last week or two from the other candidates in the race. And as far as the Democratic establishment goes, I mean, I'm not sure what the Democratic establishment means, because what we saw in this race, and it's not shocking, is there is no cohesive, monolithic Democratic establishment that can call the shots in a race like this. What we have was a bunch of candidates who, for various reasons, kind of failed to generate, to wage an effective campaign, and Fran Hong benefited from that as well. So, here we are, even now at this stage where most people see David Crowley as the leading alternative to Fran Hong, you still got 2 other candidates who stayed in the race and are going to divide up some of that vote, as well as all the people that cast votes for the candidates who are no longer in the race. And that makes it very difficult for any of these candidates to overtake Hong.
Governor Evers had not endorsed anyone for a very long time in this race. He's been a popular governor within the Democratic Party, and I've heard some suggest that maybe he blew some political capital here by throwing his weight behind David Crowley and then not having it see it maybe have the impact he might have hoped. What do you make of that?
Yeah, I don't put too much into that. I mean, I don't think anybody thinks that, you know, Governor Evers was in a position to dictate the next gubernatorial nominee in the party. And I'm not sure anybody should think that, you know, as governor, you know, his endorsement is an effort to override the will of the voters. I mean, you know, voters are going to vote the way they want to vote. And the only impact, the real impact he's had in this race, I think, has been, you know, giving David Crowley a big assist in his attempt to consolidate, you know, the non-Hong vote, if we can call it that. So he has had that impact, but I don't think he was ever in a position to dictate the outcome of the primary. And I think it's perfectly okay for him if he wants to make an endorsement. I don't think, you know, it's, you know, somehow taints his legacy if this primary doesn't work out the way he hoped. But I do think whoever wins the Democratic primary, I would expect him, you know, even if it's not his chosen candidate, to try to help that candidate, Fran Hong, if she is the candidate, win in November.
I've heard the term many are using to refer to some of her economic policies. It's economic populism here, that she has really found something people are sore about. This is one of the top issues. People are concerned about what things cost. You have someone who's not only a state representative, but a business owner who understands that part of things. How important has that been, do you think, in the support she's gotten here? It seems to be only increasing rather than leveling off.
Yeah, and it's going to be, you know, really, really, really important in her general election campaign because, you know, I would say culturally it's fair to say that she's, you know, not, you know, in the mainstream of the Wisconsin electorate for some of the reasons we've talked about. But some of these issues, some of these economic policy positions she's taken, obviously the, you know, the opposition to data centers, but even some of the other positions she's taken are in some cases positions that are held by lots of voters. So, you know, you've got this dichotomy of kind of where she's at or where she's perceived as being on cultural issues and where she's at on economic issues. I mean, that's really her best bet, her avenue, and her hope for winning in November is to hit these economic issues really hard and then try to pick up some votes from, you know, working class Wisconsin voters who may be unhappy with the way things have gone in Donald Trump's second term and may not be traditional Democratic voters, or maybe they were 20 years ago and then weren't, you know, 10 years ago, and hoping to bring them back into the party. It's a heavy lift, but that's, I think, what she has to do.
Last question I have for you before we take a break here, and that is, the polls close in a few minutes. What are you going to be looking for? What will be the clues to you which way this is going?
So first, overall turnout. I mean, we know the typical, you know, recent contested Democratic primaries in Wisconsin have had like 500,000 to 600,000 votes cast. Is this one? I would expect this one to be higher, you know, given the, you know, historic nature of this primary, given all the national attention it's getting. You would really expect it. And given the stakes for Wisconsin in November, you would expect the turnout to be higher. You know, like a lot of people, I'll be looking at Milwaukee County and Dane County because that's 40% of the Democratic vote. And we've got, you know, top contenders from Milwaukee County and Dane County. And then the rest of the state's going to have a lot to do with it. But you know, those are the big tea leaves, in addition to just, you know, what kind of vote does Hong carry out of her county and what kind of vote does David Crowley carry out of his county.
All right, Craig Gilbert, Milwaukee Journal Sentinel and political analyst, thank you for being here on the Wisconsin Live Desk.
Nice to be with you.
All right, we will take a break and come back with more. The polls are going to be closing in 2 minutes. And that will be when the votes start rolling in. So The good stuff is coming. Stay with us here on the Wisconsin Live Desk. I'm Bryan Polcyn. We'll be right back.
This is the Wisconsin Live Desk.
And Fox 6 investigator Bryan Polcyn here at the Wisconsin Live Desk, and I've decided the polls are now closed. It's jacket on. I was either going to be roll up the sleeves or put the jacket on, and I've gone jacket on. And it's cooled off a little because Carrie brought me that fan, and so it's a little cooler here in the Live Desk studio. And but we're waiting for everything to heat up now because with the polls closed, the votes are going to start coming in soon. I think in just a little bit we're going to have Jason Calvi, who's going to join us from the newsroom. I don't see him yet, but if we get Jason, we'll hear a little bit more from our political reporter about what we're watching for. Obviously, we're spending most of our time talking about the governor's race right now, but there is a lot of other stuff on the ballot across the state. I think there are somewhere on the order of 61 contested primaries all across the state. Many of them are smaller races, but you've got statewide races. We've got the governor, of course, lieutenant governor. There's only one Democratic candidate, Sarah Godlewski, and on the Republican side there are two, David Varnum and Will Martin. For Secretary of State, Milwaukee Alderwoman Jocasta Zamarripa is currently the Democratic candidate there. There are four Republican candidates vying for Secretary of State: Jay Schrader, Braden Meyer, Nate Polno, and Cindy Werner. Sarah Godlewski actually is vacating that post to run for lieutenant governor. State treasurer, there are two Democratic candidates, one Republican candidate who is the incumbent, that is John Lieber. And then there are races in all of the U.S. House districts, the 8 congressional districts here in Wisconsin. And I believe, let's see, how many of them? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. At least 6 of them are have incumbents that are running in those. Probably the most hotly contested one will be U.S. House District 7. That is the seat that is being vacated by Tom Tiffany, of course, who is expected to be the Republican nominee for governor. There are 3 on the Democratic side: Chris Armstrong, Fred Clark, and Ginger Murray in House District 7. And I think at least 4 candidates on the Republican side. And we might have, this might be one where we have all the pictures. Do we? Maybe we don't. Maybe I don't have them in front of me. But we do have in that district Michael Alfonso, Jesse Eben, Kevin Hermaning, and Nina Baum. Okay, so your names. And also Don Riala. Alfonso, listed at the top there, is the son-in-law of Sean Duffy, U.S. Transportation Secretary and has the endorsement of President Trump. In spite of being very young, he has Trump's endorsement to replace Tom Tiffany as the member of Congress in House District 7. In fact, I have a list here of all of the candidates that Donald Trump has endorsed. And let's see if I can find that list and tell you who they are. Let's see if my Microsoft Word opens up when Excel wouldn't earlier. Here we go. Of course, he has endorsed and once again renewed today his endorsement of Tiffany for governor here in Wisconsin. He first made that endorsement on January 27th, calling it a complete and total endorsement. Also for re-electing Bryan in House District 1, Derek Van Orden in House District 3, Scott Fitzgerald in House District 5, Glenn Grothman, longtime congressman in House District 6, and of course endorsing Alfonso for the open seat being vacated by Tom Tiffany in District 7, and then endorsing Tony Weed to be reelected in House District 8. Not surprisingly, not endorsing Mark Polcyn to be reelected in his district, or Gwen Moore. But in any case, those are the endorsements from Donald Trump that all come in congressional races and, of course, in the governor's race, Tom Tiffany. Have you seen if we have Jason? Have we nailed him down? No? We don't have Jason. Okay. And we know we're going to be probably not too long from now getting results rolling in, but also as we get results, we'll be hearing from probably some of the candidates beginning to speak here during this hour. So we're kind of keeping it loose so we can be prepared and ready to go for all of that. If you're just tuning in and finding out the polls have closed, I don't know if you call it tuning into streaming. Do we call it that anymore? That's, I need to bring you in. I haven't brought you in all night. Let me see, where do I hit my button so we can see you, Producer Box? Delaney, we haven't talked about this all night, but yeah, there's, what was I even saying? I lost my train of thought right there.
Tuning in.
Yeah, tuning in. Do you say tuning in to digital coverage, streaming coverage?
I think so. Yeah,
it
tune
feels
into
like
streaming.
Old school language, but in any
I think
case,
you could still say it.
But so every time you've heard me make a mistake and someone's had to fix it tonight, Delaney is the one who's taking care of things behind the scenes. So Delaney, thank you for all the work you're doing back there.
Yeah, thank you.
I come in here probably once every, 2 or 3 months, and I do the live desk.
Yeah.
And I pretend like I know what I'm doing, and I realize I haven't done this, and it's like I'm starting all over, trying to learn how to ride a bike. So it's good to have excellent support in the producer box. So we are, 8:06. Now, the votes aren't necessarily all in because there might have been places where people were still in line, but considering this isn't a general election, I don't expect this is one of those cases where lines were necessarily out the door at any of the polling places. We haven't heard of any kind of, ballots running out at any of the polling places or anything like that. I don't know if we have any estimates on numbers or vote percentages, voter turnout, but I think we're probably expecting somewhere in the neighborhood of maybe a 20-ish to 25%-ish turnout. That would be, I think, fairly typical of a partisan primary election, but don't know where we are on that. So, okay, I hear that Bria Jones may be doing a live interview. Let's see if we can get that one set up. That would be... we don't know who she's looking to talk to, but I think we're going to just maybe listen in to. Is she just going to be doing it, and we can drop right in if that's the case? All right, let's see if we can pull that up. And I've got to fix my boxes though and make sure we're going to the right place. It is Bryan style. Okay, so let me see if I can get the boxes all set up here. Nope, I've still got you. See. Thank you. There's that. I told you she helps me through these things. Box 2, router 1 is what you're telling me. All right, now let's get back and see if we can go. There we go, to Bryan Style speaking right now to our Bria Jones.
The soul of our state. Tom Tiffany stands for common sense, getting this country and getting this state back on track. And if Francesca Hong is successful tonight, there's a real risk in the direction that she wants to take our state down a very different path than where the people of Wisconsin are. Maybe the primary electorate in the Democratic Party, but not where the majority of people from Wisconsin are.
What would you say? I know you mentioned Francesca Hong. Obviously, that race has not been called yet, but what do you think, I guess, when we're looking at the grand scope of things, what challenges might be brought forth if, say, David Crowley were to win the nomination?
Well, I think in many ways they're very similar candidates. They both purport far-left extremist views. The core Democratic Party has been overtaken by liberal radical activists. And this is the challenge for the Democrats. A lot of people right now are struggling to make sure that they can afford the things that they and their family need. And the policies that both Francesca Hung and David Crowley are putting forward would actually make that situation worse. Rising taxes, putting the burden on hardworking families is the wrong direction to go. We have to go and make sure that we're putting in place policies that are helping families here in the state of Wisconsin, as we did at the national level, where we removed tax on Social Security, reduce taxes on overtime, reduce taxes on tips. The opposite approach to where the Democrats nationally and in the state of Wisconsin want to take things.
Do you believe that Tom Tiffany has what it takes to pull this all the way through in November?
Not only does he have what it takes, he is going to show everyone in this state that he is ready to be the next governor of the state of Wisconsin. I couldn't be more excited to support him. And this state needs Tom Tiffany to come in and save us and get this state back on track.
What about his vision do you believe is best for Wisconsinites?
I think it's about helping people that are working hard in the state of Wisconsin, making sure that we're reducing that tax burden on hardworking people rather than the high tax policies that we saw under Governor Evers, a 400-year tax that are supported by both leading Democratic candidates in the election, or the really horrific tax policies that Francesca Hong supports.
All right, thank you so much, Congressman. We appreciate you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so there you go. That is Congressman Bryan Stile, who is at the Tom Tiffany's watch party. That is in Heartland at the Rustic. I keep forgetting the full name of it, but the Rustic Barn. I know it's called something else, and I don't have it in front of me. You got me last time. I keep going to the well. Rustic Manor, is that what it is? Okay, thank you, Delaney. Delaney is like Roxanne in my ear, telling me all the things that I don't remember. So anyway, they're at the Rustic Manor wedding barn in Heartland. We also have Bill Miston, who is at the Hyatt downtown in Milwaukee with Milwaukee County Executive David Crowley's watch party. And we have Sam Kramer, who is up in the rafters of the music hall in Madison, where Francesca Hong is having her watch party. And so we'll be checking in with them a little bit later on. But right now, I think we have Jason Calvi. If Jason is ready to go, I'm going to go to, I have to shift that over to News Box, right? Or something like that. It's just Box 2 News. Okay, I'm just saying things out loud because it's better than me trying to pretend that I'm going to get it right the first time. There we go. So we got Jason back up again. Now I've got to bring his audio. Jason, the polls have just closed, 8/11. I don't know that we're seeing any results come in just yet, or are you starting to see anything?
We're starting to see them, but they're so minuscule. I mean, we're talking about 2,000 votes are in so far, so I don't even want to give you the results because it's such a minuscule amount.
It's the number. What's it? I mean, we can't read anything into it, but tell us what it says.
So we're seeing pretty much a dead tie, a dead heat between David Crowley and Francesca Hong. This is 1% of the total votes counted. So we still have 99 more to go. And it's showing David Crowley with 1,400 votes and Francesca Hong with 1,300 votes.
And again, don't read much into numbers this early because obviously statistically that would be wildly misleading.
But interesting enough, this is what I will zoom in on, Brian. I know we can't really look at 1% of the votes and make a determination about who's going to win this race. But in the 1% of votes that have been counted, Mandela Barnes has 5% of those votes. Sarah Rodriguez has 6% of those votes. That is 11% between those two candidates who dropped out of this race.
Now, does that suggest perhaps that those are absentee ballots that they've been counting throughout
100%.
The day?
Yeah, 100%. I think most of those are probably absentee ballots that people submitted those before these candidates dropped out. Remember, in Wisconsin, in years past, you were able to do what's called spoiling your absentee ballot, which means you'd go pretty much before Election Day, you'd go back, say, hey, I don't really want to redo. And so they would rip up your old envelope and ballot and all that, and then you get a new one, and you'd be able to cast a new absentee ballot. So that's spoiling. That was allowed up until July of 2026, right now, last month, where the Wisconsin Elections Commission voted to no longer allow spoiling, meaning once your absentee ballot is mailed back to the clerk, there's no redos. So we're seeing right here, at least with that 1% of votes that have been counted, Sarah Rodriguez with 6%, Mandela Barnes with now about 5%, and they're, again, dropped out of the race. So is this people that already submitted their absentee ballots that we're seeing here, or are these people that liked Mandela Barnes and wanted to see him elected the next governor?
I'm just curious then, out of that same batch of numbers, what are we seeing for Tom Tiffany and Andy Mansky?
Well, I'm mostly focused on.
Okay, so you don't have that. I put you on the spot,
No,
but
but
I thought I was just curious if we're. I mean, I know we can't really make anything out of this early,
Yeah,
but
I got it for you. So
okay.
I'm seeing of the 1% of votes in right now, we're seeing Tom Tiffany getting about 96, 97% of all the votes that have been counted so far, which is about 1% of the statewide total that have been counted. So don't read too much into this. Tom Tiffany very safely will be winning the nomination. I wouldn't be surprised if the AP calls this race shortly, because he's got the money, he's got the millions of dollars, he's got the grassroots support across the state. He has the really important endorsement of President Donald Trump. And Tom Tiffany is going to be the next Republican nominee for governor of the state of Wisconsin. Andy Mansky getting about 3% right now, according to those 1% of votes that have been.
And what was he polling at before in the Marquette poll? I don't, because I was doing the same thing as you. I've got all the numbers in my head from the Democratic side. I couldn't tell you what he was polling in the Marquette University poll.
The latest Marquette poll, which was really fascinating, found a number of Republican voters said they were still undecided. And again, there was just the two candidates, so what was the indecision there? But if these numbers continue to stay where they are right now, with 97% voting for Tom Tiffany, it would show that the Republican voters were not, they're going with Tom Tiffany.
Unmute my mic. What's next? What do you keep watching for, or is it just refreshing? I mean, are we hitting refresh all night, waiting to see what more comes in here?
I'm going to be going county by county here in a second. I'm going to be starting to focus in on which counties are in now. I'm going to talk to producer Andrew here. Andrew, you were saying that the results were coming from Jefferson County?
Okay. Well, they don't call this a live desk for nothing. Let's watch Jason, our political reporter, pull up the numbers from Jefferson County here.
So, and how do you sort them by county? Yeah. Oh, you just look at the map. Okay. So right now, when I told you how we've got about 1% of the votes counted here in Wisconsin, most of those votes are in Jefferson County. There are a number of votes that have also been counted in Waukesha County. Let's go to that right now if we can. So Jefferson County, 97% of the votes in Jefferson County have been counted. So Jefferson County is giving us our first indication of one of the counties and where they're deciding between Crowley and Francesca Hong. And with Jefferson County, 97% of the votes totaled in Jefferson County, David Crowley is at 40% and Francesca Hong's at 37%. So that's Jefferson County. And then the other candidates are getting 22%, according to Jefferson County. So let's continue keeping our eyes on Jefferson County.
The other candidates, meaning, are you talking about Joel Brennan and Kelder Royce?
Yeah, I can go through the whole list here, Brian, if you don't mind. So I wish I could just show you my screen.
Tell us what you've got.
Yeah. So we got David Crowley at 40. This is Jefferson County with 97% of Jefferson County counted. David Crowley at 40%. Francesca Hong at 37.5%, Kelder Royce at 9%, Sarah Rodriguez, who's out of the race, at 4.5%, Joel Brennan, who's in the race, at 4.2%, Mandela Barnes, also out of the race, at 4%, Missy Hughes at 0.3%, 27 votes for her, and 1 write-in.
So 22% combined for those other candidates?
Yes.
Okay. And that is Jefferson County, obviously, in between southeastern Wisconsin and Dane County, but those are the places we're really going to be looking for, but they'll be the longest ones. Yeah. Dane County and Milwaukee County.
I think Dane County will be in relatively soon because they don't have a central count process for absentee ballots. Milwaukee does, so all the absentee ballots in the city of Milwaukee go to a central count and they're opened there at that central count location. But for Dane County, they're actually absentee ballots are counted at, or for Madison, city of Madison, the absentee ballots are counted at each person's polling place.
That will be very telling what happens in Dane County. It's really a question, I think, of how big of a lead Francesca Hong will have in her home county. Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah, how much she's able to ramp up the score in her home county, which Milwaukee and Madison together really are those two strong Democratic strongholds that they need to run the scores up in their home counties to be able to do well tonight. But again, looking at Jefferson County now, the results are showing me that there's 82% of the votes counted in Jefferson County, showing David Crowley with about a 3.5 point lead.
So that sounds like it just dropped. It said 97%.
Yeah.
Now it says 82%.
Yeah, 82. So these numbers are fluid.
It's very early.
And I think that's important to remind people about, that these results are not official results. We don't get that until the whole certification process, which takes a long time to certify those election results. We're giving you the best estimate of what we have right now based on the numbers that are coming in at the county level and the municipal levels.
And if you watch the bottom of your screen, your streaming screen here, you can see some of those numbers are starting to cycle through, and you'll see in the lower right-hand corner, right down there at the bottom of your screen, the estimated percentage of votes that are in that those numbers are based on. So you're starting to see numbers, but as always, early in the night, it's hard to make too much of what you see because it's a very small percentage of the overall votes, and it really depends on where they come from in what jurisdictions as to how meaningful those numbers are. But Jason, I'm going to let you get back to work on looking at some of these numbers, and we'll check back in with you here in just a little bit. Delaney, yeah, I think we're going to take a break and we'll figure out who we're going to go to next, and we're going to start tallying these things up and telling you what we see. You see right there on your screen some of the numbers beginning to roll in here on election night. It's August 11th, 2026, the partisan primary election in the state of Wisconsin, with the race for governor to find out who is going to run in the general election to try and replace Tony Evers as the next governor of the state of Wisconsin. I'm Bryan Polcyn here at the Wisconsin Live Desk. We'll be back right after this.
This is the Wisconsin Live Desk.
Fox 6 investigator Bryan Polcyn here at the Wisconsin Live Desk, and our political reporter Jason Calvi was not wrong. It did not take long for the Associated Press to call one of these races. Tom Tiffany will be the Republican nominee for governor in the state of Wisconsin in 2026. AP calling it just moments ago. That's not a surprise. He was opposed by Andy Mansky, but it was never really in doubt in terms of numbers. So that one being called very early. It'll be a while longer before we get a call on the Democratic side. I think that is certain. And I'm just kind of picking up something here. I think we have Sam Kramer, right? We have Sam who is ready. I'm going to make sure I've got my buttons all ready to go so we can get him set to go here as well. But let's get Sam Kramer in on this. He is at the Francesca Hong party or watch party right now, and let's get out to him. You're up there in the rafters at, remind me the name of the music hall there.
It is Atwood Music Hall.
And you are up on top. If you show folks the view you have, you got a great view of the stage, but
It is a great view of the stage.
You're crowded
It's not
behind.
exactly the best working conditions. So here we go, up here, trying to be steady. The
And you've got
connection
quite
isn't
a
the
crowd
best.
there.
But yeah, the crowd has continued to grow. When you guys were just in your break, there was a huge chorus of boos, if you will. And I was wondering, well, what is that? They have CNN on the projector here, and President Trump was just taking questions on the tarmac at Joint Base Andrews. So it was nothing pertaining to this race per se.
I thought maybe they heard Jason Calvi, but I guess
it caught
they're
our
not watching
attention.
Fox Local. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
What would you say other than the chorus of boos for President Trump on the screen? What's the mood there right now? Certainly, it looks to be a crowded dance floor.
It's lively, certainly. CNN is cycling through all the other states that have it too, and their correspondent, who is here, he was able to do a live shot on their camera because again, connection in here isn't super great. And when it showed up on the projector, the crowd in here went nuts, waving their signs, doing the whole thing. So this crowd has continued to grow. Again, I talked to staff. Capacity is about 600 here inside Atwood Music Hall. So I would imagine that we would get there. In fact, there are some press that are outside not coming in just because it is so tight quarters up here, not the best connectivity. So everything's hype. I haven't seen Francesca Hong, but yeah, it's very casual right now.
So they're watching CNN, so we don't know what kind of results they're showing, and honestly, I don't care what they're showing, but except for the reaction you might be getting there. We do know that early numbers are coming in, and we're seeing from the Associated Press right now that with 6% of votes counted, and it's a very small percentage, David Crowley has a lead of 42.6% to 33.2%. Again, that could depend on where those numbers are coming from. But I would be curious to know if they see those numbers, what kind of reaction you're hearing over there right now.
Yeah. I got to tell you, like, as I scan out to the crowd right now, a lot of them aren't looking at the screen. And as CNN continues their coverage, they just have a ticker along the bottom. So there are no Wisconsin numbers there right now. But I think what it's going to be a battle of is kind of how strong of a Democratic hold does Francesca Hong have here in Dane County versus what Crowley has in Milwaukee County, and how much crossover can help the other candidate, if that makes sense.
I should actually clarify, we do know where some of these votes are coming from, and this looks like a large percentage of the votes counted so far are 49% of votes counted in Waukesha County. And in Waukesha County, David Crowley does currently have a lead of about 10,700 votes to Francesca Hong's 7,190 votes. There's also a substantial number from Jefferson County where about 83% of the votes are in, where David Crowley also has there about a 4% lead. So not much at all yet is coming from either, well, nothing so far from Milwaukee or Dane County does have 5% of the votes counted. In Dane County right now I don't know what 5% of votes these are, but in Dane County right now, Associated Press is reporting that David Crowley has 2,912 votes to Francesca Hong's 2,822. It's the first 5% of votes, but in her home county early on, it's showing a lead. And again, you never know where exactly that's coming from, what part of the county it might be, what that might represent. But I think that is a surprise in terms of the massive lead I think polls would have suggested she would have.
Right. Or perhaps the power that an endorsement from an outbound governor, whose popularity isn't as strong now as it was just a couple of months ago, would be for David Crowley. And I think, as I think about it right now, isn't that the biggest piece to that endorsement is with Governor Evers' backing, doesn't that give David Crowley a good piece of the pie in Dane County, if you will, that otherwise almost certainly would have gone for Francesca Hong?
And as we always say, we're so early on. Don't start reading too much into these, but these are the numbers we have, so we report to you what we see. They can shift very quickly, and they may very well as the night goes on, but we know the Associated Press has already called the race for Tom Tiffany on the Republican side, and obviously you've got a house full of people there. Based on the crowded media loft you're in right now and the number of people below, they're certainly expecting a party tonight. I can tell we've got a little delay with Sam. Can you still hear me, Sam?
I might be losing you.
Okay.
My connection's going in and out.
Yeah, okay. I think we're going to break away, Sam, and we'll try to come back to you in a little bit, but I think you're probably competing with a lot of other, unless we give this one more shot, but I think you're competing with a lot of other streams in that building. Yeah, okay. We're going to come back here for now, and maybe we'll get a chance to check in with Sam a little bit later. But you got a glimpse of the floor there. That ballroom is full, or dance floor, music hall. It is full of people who are awaiting a celebration for Francesca Hong, the Democratic socialist running on the Democratic ticket in Wisconsin for governor. But early on, and I say very early, you have David Crowley with the lead just about everywhere. Now, Dane County is now up to 20% of votes counted. And with 20% of the votes counted in Dane County, Francesca Hong has a 40% to 39% lead. She's got about a 300 vote lead in her home county on David Crowley. That's with 20% of the votes counted. We will see where that continues to go as the numbers rise. She's now flipped what was trailing slightly to leading very marginally in her home county. In Waukesha County, David Crowley has a 16-point lead, 10,700 votes to 7,190. And in Jefferson County, he has a lead of about 400 votes, with 86% of the votes now counted there. He has 3,528 to Francesca Hong's 3,173. All the other candidates there with a little under 2,000 votes in Jefferson County. Francesca Hong does have the lead in some smaller counties early on. In Eau Claire County, with 31% of the votes counted, she's got about a 5 percentage point lead over David Crowley there. And in La Crosse County has about a 4% lead over David Crowley there. And then down in the far southeastern corner of the state in Kenosha County, with about half of the votes counted, Francesca Hong has a 42% to 40% lead, 3,376 votes to 3,232 votes over David Crowley there. Crowley has a small lead right now. He has about a 7% lead in Wood County. In Fond du Lac County, he's up by about 400 votes. That's about a 9 percentage point advantage. In Columbia County, he's up by about 100 votes, 200 to 100, so that's a really small sample size. And in Sauk County, David Crowley has a lead of about 4%. So if polls showed this was going to be a runaway race for Francesca Hong, the early numbers coming in tonight's show, it's not so runaway for either of them yet. This is a close race, and it could be a little longer night before we know where this goes. I'm Bryan Polcyn at the Wisconsin Live Desk. We'll have more results and more analysis coming up in just a bit.
This is the Wisconsin Live Desk.
Hey everybody, Fox 6 investigator Bryan Polcyn here. We are past poll closing time. Votes are starting to come in on primary election night. This is the partisan primary, fall primary of 2026 here in the state of Wisconsin, and you're watching the Wisconsin Live Desk. We, in a little bit, are going to hear from Bill Miston, who is at the Hyatt in downtown Milwaukee with the David Crowley campaign. We just heard from Sam Kramer, who was there with the Francesca Hong campaign in Madison. And I hear that Bill is available, so we're just going to bring him in right now while we can. And Bill, I understand, by the way, one good thing that we're really grateful for is they're watching the Wisconsin Live Desk right there at the Crowley campaign. What might be not so easy is how you hear things if it's reverberating in the background, but we'll do our best here, Bill. We just read some numbers that show this race is not the runaway race early on for Francesca Hong that it might have, they thought. What kind of reaction has that gotten there in the room?
Well, right now it's about 100 people or so by my count that are milling about both in the banquet hall or the ballroom here on the second floor of the Hyatt in downtown Milwaukee, as well as out in the mezzanine level outside. There's a cash bar outside. People are kind of trickling in. So I don't think people are paying too much attention right now to these early numbers, as really one shouldn't at this point, because it is so early in this race tonight. David Crowley, one of four in this four-way Democratic primary, and trailing in the recent polls to the front runner right now in those polls, Francesca Hong, as you had seen earlier with Sam Kramer at that event in Madison. But going into election night, we spoke to Crowley this morning, after he cast his ballot at Milwaukee German Immersion School, and he said that he feels that there is momentum behind his campaign heading into Election Day, considering that he did leave the race for about 10 days, endorsing Lieutenant Governor Sarah Rodriguez. There were issues with her campaign finances. She dropped out of the race and Crowley got back in. A big boon for his campaign has been Governor Tony Evers, the outgoing governor here in Wisconsin, endorsing Milwaukee County Executive David Crowley. Crowley campaigned with Evers as well as Congresswoman Gwen Moore here at the Cooperage in Milwaukee yesterday. Crowley has the endorsements of a number of unions as well as elected leaders here in the state, mayors, common council members. I'm sorry if I'm pausing here because a little inside baseball side note here. Because they're playing the Live Desk over my shoulder, I'm hearing myself on a severe delay. So if you ever see TV people maybe take that earpiece out of their ear, it's because that there's a delay in what they're hearing and it kind of messes you up. So let's get back on track here, though. Heading into the election day, Crowley said that he, again, feels that there has been a significant amount of momentum behind his campaign for the turnout for his events across the state, and that it was a surreal moment for him to be able to cast his ballot today with his family by his side, his daughter casting the first ever ballot for her since turning 18. And he said, considering that he was elected as a county executive during the pandemic, it was heartwarming for him to be able to cast his ballot for him as he sees his name on that ballot running on the Democratic ticket for governor. So lots of work today, too, for Crowley. After he cast his ballot, he was back out this afternoon near 90th and North in Wauwatosa, knocking on doors, talking to voters, and then going to the Wisconsin State Fair to drum up support there. But again, all that support, regardless, the Democrats are already planning on a unity tour once the election results are in and they know who is the Democratic nominee for the governor's race. They plan on doing a statewide tour to ensure that that turnout is there come November. Now, it's important to note, Crowley says that he is the best positioned candidate in this four-way primary to defeat Tom Tiffany. A big importance for Democrats is to retain that check on the currently Republican-controlled legislature, something that Governor Tony Evers has been able to be for his last two terms. So definitely something that is important for Democrats, but they're already lining those ducks up in a row for whatever may happen tonight.
My one question for you, Bill. Is it still chilly in the room?
It is. Okay, so for those that may not be familiar, Bryan had been complaining about the heat in the studio that he's in right now. I see that I'm looking at a monitor over here, so I see that you're wearing a jacket now. You put a jacket back on.
Because
thank
I got a
goodness,
fan.
right? And so I'm sure you have lots of fans, Bryan. I'm sure you have lots of fans.
Oh, that's kind of you.
But, yeah, and so hey, the check's in the mail, right? You're sending me the check?
Of course.
Okay, good. So, yes, it's still quite chilly in here, but it's warming up a little bit now that a couple more people have been making their way in.
All right, Bill Misson, we'll check back in with you in a little while at the David Crowley watch party at the Hyatt in downtown Milwaukee. It is now, where's my time? I lost my time on the screen because we've got all the results on the bottom. It is 8:39 right now, and I want to bring in Charles Franklin if I can get to him because I think we have him. Charles Franklin of the Marquette Law School poll is back, and if he's available, I'm going to try to get him punched up here as well. Charles, we are starting to see numbers come in, and they are early numbers, but we now have some in from both Dane County and Milwaukee County, and for that matter, Waukesha County. And at the moment, overall, it's about a 2 percentage point lead for David Crowley. But with numbers coming in from both counties, what do you make of what you're seeing right now?
Yeah, it's kind of interesting because the Milwaukee numbers with close to a third of the vote, no, 44% of the vote in, Crowley's only leading by a little over a point. But if you go to Dane County, Hong is only leading by about 3 points there. So these two counties that you might think would be big, strong counties for Crowley and for Hong, respectively, are actually turning out to be quite close in both of them. In contrast, Crowley is leading by about 14 points in Waukesha with 2/3 of the vote in. So there's sort of an interesting pattern developing here where, you know, the sort of strongholds are looking kind of close. And the other counties in the Milwaukee suburbs and in between Madison and Milwaukee, Jefferson County, for example, are giving Crowley a modest lead of 3 to 5 points. Rock County's another one. So it's an interesting pattern. It's still early in the evening, and Hong has the margin, Crowley's lead over Hong has been tightening over the last 25 minutes or so. So it's still early. We're far from being ready to call this race, but it certainly is shaping up to be a much closer race than my poll or anybody else's poll was showing just 2 weeks ago.
Well, and that's, I think what stood out to me is what you said is we're looking right now, 44% of the votes counted in both Dane County and Milwaukee County. And those are the ones you go, okay, these are the ones we're focused on because it's her stronghold versus his. Well, right now in Dane County, she's got a slim lead of a few percent, just a couple of thousand votes. And in Milwaukee County, he's got a slim lead of just about 1,000 votes. So neither one of them is running away right now with their home county.
No, that's right. And that surprises me. I was expecting those two to be, you know, strongholds for each of them. And I thought Waukesha and Ozaki might be much closer. In fact, those two are not as close. And the big ones, Milwaukee and Dane, are close. So
you also mentioned Brown County. Is that right? There's one to watch?
Yes, and I had not seen anything there. There's
got
a third of the vote in there.
Third in, and
it's Crowley by 2 points, 2 percentage points. So, you know, regardless of where it ends up, it's shaping up to be a good night for David Crowley, certainly exceeding expectations. And the wide open question at this point is, you know, who's ahead at the finish line?
Obviously, that's the only one that really matters in the end because that's who's going to get the nomination. But we said this earlier when we talked to you, this had to be one of the most difficult races to measure through polling because of the fact that every time you would go out and talk to people, another candidate would either drop out or get in or drop out. And how do you really measure what the electorate is thinking? You're just trying to figure out, can we get the voters who are actually going to show up and vote? Now, do we even have the right candidates?
Yeah, that's right. And I think the one thing that we talked about when we released the polling is that Hong was strong with younger voters, but weak with older voters. And historically, older voters are folks that are much more likely to turn out in a primary than young folks. So that was a difference that would seem to enhance Crowley's position if the old folks turned out the way they usually do and the young folks stayed home. On the other hand, Hong was not very strong with moderate voters, but strong with very liberal voters. And the moderate voters were also less likely to vote, and the very liberal were insisting that they would absolutely vote. So the question was, what's the kind of wash between these, sort of the age factor that might have suggested Crowley would do better than the poll was showing, but also the ideological factor, which suggested maybe Hong would do a little better. So the bottom line is it's shaping up to be a very close race tonight, and it does confound the substantial lead that we saw with Hong in, again, my polling and in all the other polls in July.
The race is on and the count is going. Charles Franklin, director of the Marquette Law School poll, thank you once again for being with us here on the Wisconsin Live Desk.
Thank you.
All right, I think we're going to bring in Jason Calvi, if I can switch things up here as well, our political reporter, because I know he's watching these numbers closely. Do we have Jason? Okay, Jason, not quite ready. We're going to have a minute. Let's take a break. When we come back, we're going to hear from our political reporter about these numbers that are coming in and what we might see over the next 30 minutes or more before we take you up to Fox 6. Well, not 30 minutes. We got 15 minutes till Fox 6 News at 9. We're here on the live desk for another quarter of an hour. We'll see how far the race goes in that time. We'll be back in just a couple of minutes.
This is the Wisconsin Live Desk.
Hello once again, Fox 6 investigator Bryan Polcyn here from the Wisconsin Live Desk on election night, August 11th, 2026. It's a Wisconsin partisan primary, and the race at the top of the ticket is the race for governor. Governor Tony Evers not running for re-election, so who will replace him? Is it going to be Tom Tiffany, who the Associated Press is now calling the Republican nominee for governor in Wisconsin? Will it be, and you can see there, AP projecting Tom Tiffany to be the winner. And in fact, I think we have a statement from Congressman Tiffany. Here it is. He says, quote, "I want to thank Wisconsinites across our state for putting their trust in me. This fight is bigger than any one party. It's bigger than any one candidate. This fight is about Wisconsin and protecting the state we know and love. It's about lowering property taxes, returning the surplus to you, getting utility costs under control, and letting hardworking Wisconsinites keep more of what they earn. Let's move Wisconsin forward together, end quote. That statement provided by Tom Tiffany's campaign. He is at a party in Heartland, and we do have a reporter there. Bria Jones is there. If he comes out to give a speech, I don't know if that's going to happen here in just the next couple of minutes, but we would head there. Anyway, we'll be following that throughout the night. I want to real quickly get to Jason Calvi, if I have all my buttons set up right to do that, and I always have to go in here, Delaney, and find that. Box 2, new page down, Box 2 News. I don't see Box 2 News. There it is. Okay, now we can bring up Jason Calvi. Let's do it. Let's go to the newsroom where Jason is standing by. And Jason, I know we're seeing numbers come in, and as I talked to Charles Franklin, we're seeing numbers that maybe are not exactly what we expected. But then again, with this race, it's hard to know what to expect.
Exactly, and there's not really much of a benchmark because the last time Democrats had a competitive primary for governor was 2018. There were 10 names on the ballot back then. This go around, as we're looking at the results coming in, according to AP, 50% of the estimated votes have already been counted. And David Crowley, with a several point lead, he's got 41% of the vote here in battleground Wisconsin, according to the numbers from AP, with 50% of the ballots counted here in Wisconsin. To Francesca Hong's 39%. So the polls had suggested that Hong was going to dominate statewide. When I asked Charles Franklin about the polls, I said, how do those numbers look outstate, out of the Milwaukee and Dane County markets? How does it look up north, for example? And he said she was leading across the whole state. And the most recent polling was showing Francesca Hong with a 20-point lead. And here we are on election night with 50% of the votes counted, and David Crowley is leading the pack right now.
And it's not by a tremendous amount. He's got, according to the Associated Press, with 51% of the votes in, he's got a couple of point lead. But what is, we talked to Charles Franklin about this moments ago. What's so surprising is that in Dane County, she's leading by a handful of percentage points, 42% to 38%. Yep. And in Milwaukee County, David Crowley is leading by just a couple of percentage points. So neither one of them is running away with it in what should be their strongest, their home base. And because of that, the race remains very close.
And it could potentially be a long night ahead looking at these numbers. I was expecting that Dane County, the home county of Francesca Hong, was going to show some very strong numbers here. For sure, a majority of Dane County, and right now she's at a plurality. She's got 42% in her home county of Dane County to David Crowley's 38%, as you just mentioned, Brian. And that's with about 58% of Dane County votes estimated to be counted already. So that's not where Francesca Hong needed to be tonight to claim a decisive victory. We're going to see where those numbers come in as all of the rest of the ballots are counted. But I was expecting if she was going to have a good night, she was going to be well above 50% in her home county. And same thing with David Crowley. I was expecting that he was going to do a little bit stronger in his home county of Milwaukee County. The numbers in right now with 74% estimated vote counted in Milwaukee County have David Crowley at 46% to Francesca Hong's 44%.
I think if I had just known those Milwaukee County numbers, I would have said, oh, Hong is going to run away with this, but she's not running away with it yet in Dane County either. And so this remains a very close race. Jason Calvi in the newsroom, thank you very much for hanging in there with us throughout the night. And we're going to be hearing more from you on Fox 6 News at 9 and 10 o'clock. This is about all my time here at the Wisconsin Live Desk tonight. We are going to continue coverage on Fox Local. We'll have it on Fox 6 News at 9 and 10, Fox Wake Up, and more.